I am a 32-year-old male, and my wife, Sarah, is 30. We've been married for 4 years, but we've been together for 7. I thought she was my soulmate. I really did. Economically, I've been incredibly fortunate. I work a high-paying job at the intersection of tech and finance. Because of my hard work and some smart investments early on, I was able to buy a beautiful 4-bedroom house entirely in my own name before we even got married. Sarah had some student debt, which I gladly helped her pay off so we could start our lives together on the right foot. I've always tried to be the guy who takes care of everyone. 2 years ago, my parents fell on incredibly hard times financially due to some poor business decisions and health issues. They were on the verge of losing everything. Because I wanted to be a good son, I stepped up. I didn't want them moving into our space, so I bought a separate, nice 2-bedroom townhouse just a few miles away. I paid the entire down payment, put the deed in my name, and told them they could live there completely rent-free. The only thing they had to worry about was their own groceries. I even cover the property taxes and the HOA fees every single month. I thought I was doing the honorable thing. Everything was perfect until about 6 months ago. Sarah got a major promotion at her corporate marketing job. I was thrilled for her. She had been working so hard, and she finally landed a role working directly under the regional director, a 45-year-old guy named Richard. But as soon as she started reporting to Richard, things began to shift. The changes were gradual at first, but looking back, the red flags were blinding. Sarah suddenly underwent a complete wardrobe overhaul. She started buying incredibly expensive, form-fitting work clothes that were wildly different from her usual professional attire. She started wearing a specific, pricey perfume that she had never used before. Most notably, her phone habits changed. She used to leave her phone lying around carelessly, but suddenly, it was glued to her hand. She started placing it face down on every surface, and she even changed her passcode. It felt like she was guarding government secrets. Then came the late nights. Sarah started coming home at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., sometimes even later. The excuse was always the same. They were pushing incredibly hard to hit quarterly targets, or Richard needed her help preparing presentations for the executive board. Along with the late hours came a freezing emotional distance. She stopped greeting me when she came home. If I asked a simple, innocent question like, "Hey, how was your day?" she would snap at me, telling me she was too tired to be interrogated. One evening, I tried to confront her gently about how distant she had become. I told her I missed her and felt like we were drifting apart. She immediately flipped the script and went on the defensive. She looked at me with pure disgust and called me insecure and controlling. She said, "I'm finally building a real career, and instead of supporting me, you're trying to suffocate me. Do you want me to fail?" I felt a massive wave of guilt. I internalized it, thinking maybe I was being clingy. To make up for it, I backed off entirely. I tried to be the most accommodating husband possible. I took over all the household chores, did all the grocery shopping, and cooked dinner every night so it would be warm whenever she decided to grace me with her presence. That brings us to 2 weeks ago. On a Friday night, Sarah texted me saying she was going out for celebratory drinks with her team after a big client win. She didn't roll through the front door until past 1 a.m., completely wasted. She barely stumbled past the entryway and collapsed fast asleep on the living room couch, leaving her phone sitting right there on the coffee table. As I walked over to put a blanket over her, the phone screen lit up. It was a lock screen preview of a text notification from Richard. It read, "I can't stop thinking about what we did in my office today. Can't wait for our business trip next week." My blood ran completely cold. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely function. I knelt down by the couch, took Sarah's limp hand, and pressed her thumb against the scanner to unlock the phone. What I found destroyed me. It wasn't just a casual mistake. It was a treasure trove of betrayal. There were explicit text messages, intimate photos, and videos dating back a full 4 months. They routine texted about how clueless I was, laughing at the fact that I was cooking dinner for her while she was sleeping with him. My heart completely shattered into a million pieces right there on the living room floor. Sitting in the dark, crying silently so I wouldn't wake her, I systematically forwarded every single text, thread, photo, and video to my personal cloud drive. I made sure I had everything. The next morning, I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I went to my home office, printed out roughly 50 pages of her text messages and explicit photos, walked back into the bedroom, and dropped the heavy stack of paper right onto her lap while she was waking up. She blinked, confused by the weight, and looked down. I watched the color instantly drain from her face as she recognized her own words typed out in black and white. Her immediate reaction followed the classic cheater's playbook. First came the desperate denial. "This isn't what it looks like, it's just a joke, we were just messing around." When she realized that defense was completely useless, her fear transformed into blinding anger. She jumped out of bed and got right in my face, screaming, "How dare you go through my phone? You violated my privacy. You have no right to spy on me." I just stood there, looking at her with total detachment. When I didn't engage or argue back, the anger dissolved into hysterical crying. She fell to her knees, grabbing my jeans, begging and sobbing. Suddenly, she was hitting me with every empty excuse in the book. It didn't mean anything, I swear. It was a horrible mistake. He has power over my career. I felt so pressured by him. It was sickening to hear. I knew for a fact she was lying through her teeth. The printed texts in her hands proved she was a highly enthusiastic participant, often initiating the hookups and mocking how oblivious I was. Disgusted, I peeled her hands off me, walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove away. In a complete state of shock, I naturally drove straight to my parents' townhouse, the very property I bought for them and allowed them to live in completely rent-free. It happened to be Sunday, and as I walked inside, I realized my younger brother and sister were also there for a family lunch. I collapsed onto their living room couch and broke down completely. I cried openly in front of my entire family, pouring my heart out, telling them every horrific detail of what Sarah had done to me. I sat there waiting for them to hug me, to be furious on my behalf, and to tell me they had my back. Instead, a suffocating silence filled the room. My mother looked away, let out a long, dramatic sigh, and said, "Well, son, marriage is hard. Women make mistakes when they feel neglected at home." I stared at her, completely paralyzed by the lack of empathy. Before I could even process her words, my father chimed in with a phrase that shattered whatever was left of my spirit. He looked at me sternly and said, "You need to be a man and forgive her. Divorce is a sin, and you will ruin our family's image in the community. Plus, just think about how much she loves you. You can't throw a marriage away over a slip-up." I looked over at my siblings, expecting them to defend me, but they just nodded in agreement. My brother told me I was being too sensitive, and my sister added that a real man protects his marriage and swallows his pride at all costs. I felt like I was trapped in a twilight zone. My wife had spent months sleeping with her boss, laughing at me, and my own flesh and blood were treating me like I was the problem. The disgusting truth behind their betrayal came to light just a few hours later. My sister accidentally sent a text to our family group chat that was meant only for my mother. The text read, "Did Sarah say if she's still sending the cruise tickets? Make sure OP doesn't ruin this." My stomach dropped. I immediately confronted my sister, demanding to know what she meant. Under pressure, she spilled everything, and the puzzle pieces finally clicked into place. Sarah had been planning this fallback option for weeks. Knowing she was playing with fire, she had already called my mother a month ago. She had been systematically sweet-talking my parents, sending them expensive gift baskets, and subtly hinting that once she and Richard took her career to the next level, she was going to buy my parents a massive vacation home in Florida. But it went even deeper than greed. My parents were motivated by pure, unadulterated fear. They realized that if I divorced Sarah, I would likely sell the townhouse they were living in to liquidate my assets, split the estate, or just get a fresh start away from this town. They weren't protecting my marriage. They were protecting their own comfort. They were willing to sacrifice my mental health, my dignity, and my self-respect just to ensure they kept living rent-free. Over the next 3 days, I refused to take any of Sarah's calls. I stayed at a cheap hotel, trying to process the double betrayal. During this time, my phone was absolutely bombarded by nonstop calls and texts from my parents and siblings. They called me stubborn, fragile, and ego-driven. They told me I was throwing a childish tantrum. To make matters worse, Sarah sent me a smug text on Tuesday evening. It read, "Your own parents and siblings think you're completely overreacting. Everyone can see you're being unreasonable. Let's just put this silly drama behind us. You can move back home, and we can go to couples therapy." Seeing that text, seeing her total lack of genuine remorse, combined with the sickening betrayal of my own family, caused something deep inside me to snap. The sadness and the tears instantly evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard, calculating rage. I looked at the text from my family, and then at the text from my wife, and realized a fundamental truth. I was completely surrounded by leeches. Every single person in my life was using me for my money, my stability, and my kindness, while harboring zero actual respect for me as a human being. They wanted me to be a man. Fine. I was going to show them exactly what a man driven to the edge could do. The next morning, I called the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city and retained him on the spot. I officially filed for divorce, instructing him to ensure Sarah wouldn't get a single penny of the house that was exclusively in my name. Once the legal paperwork was set in motion, I sat down at my laptop and began planning a cold, calculated, two-pronged revenge that would completely destroy their comfortable little worlds. My counterattack began on a Thursday morning, and I executed it with military precision. Strike one was aimed directly at my parents. I had my attorney draft a formal, legally binding 30-day eviction notice for them. Because the townhouse was entirely in my name, I paid all the bills, and there was never a formal lease agreement. They were legally classified as month-to-month tenants at will. They had absolutely no legal leg to stand on. I drove over to the property while they were out, slid the certified legal documents directly into their mailbox, and left without saying a word. The free ride was officially over. Strike two was the public exposure, and it was designed to incinerate Sarah's comfortable new reality. I compiled a clean, undeniable, heavily organized PDF file containing the most damning text threads, explicit photos, and timestamps of their office trysts. I didn't just send it to a random corporate hotline. I emailed it directly to the corporate HR director of Sarah's company, the CEO, and every member of the executive board. For maximum collateral damage, I tracked down Richard's wife on Facebook Messenger and LinkedIn and dropped the entire file into her inbox with a brief message. Thought you should know what your husband is doing on his business trips with my wife. To ensure there was absolutely no room for them to twist the narrative, I took to Facebook and Instagram to post a public life update. I tagged both Sarah and Richard so it would appear directly on their timelines for all our friends, coworkers, and extended family to see. I kept it cold and professional. To save everyone the trouble of asking, Sarah and I are divorcing due to her ongoing affair with her boss, Richard. I wish them both the best in their new life together. Within 24 hours, the nuclear bomb exploded. Richard's wife didn't hesitate for a single second. She threw his clothes onto the lawn, kicked him out of their mansion, and immediately hired a top-tier attorney to file for a high-asset divorce. At their corporate headquarters, panic set in. Because Richard was a high-level supervisor sleeping with a direct subordinate, the company's legal team realized they were staring down the barrel of a massive, multi-million-dollar sexual harassment and hostile work environment lawsuit. To save their own skins, the board fired Richard immediately. Sarah was terminated less than an hour later for gross violations of corporate ethics and conduct codes. Just like that, Sarah's precious professional reputation in her industry was completely, irrevocably incinerated. No reputable firm in the city would touch her with a 10-foot pole. That evening, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree, vibrating nonstop with hundreds of frantic calls and notifications. Sarah called me from a blocked number, screaming and hyperventilating so hard she could barely breathe. She wept hysterically, calling me a monster who had ruined her career, stripped away her livelihood, and destroyed an innocent man's family over a mistake. Then my parents went completely nuclear. My mother left screaming voicemails, wailing that they were elderly, that they had absolutely nowhere to go, and that evicting your own flesh and blood made me a heartless, cold-blooded villain. My siblings flooded my inbox with paragraphs of pure rage, texting me that I had brought ultimate shame to the family name and that as far as they were concerned, I was dead to them. I didn't argue. I didn't engage in their drama. I calmly sat on my couch and systematically blocked my siblings, my wife, and her pathetic ex-boss on every single platform. Before I blocked my parents, however, I sent them one final, parting text message. You told me to be a man. A man doesn't fund the comfortable lives of people who disrespect, betray, and leech off him. You have 30 days left in my property. Find a job. Then, I blocked them too. I immediately put my beautiful 4-bedroom house up for sale, packed up my belongings into a single moving truck, and leased a luxury high-rise apartment closer to the city center to start completely fresh. They are all calling me a heartless monster for ruining their lives. But honestly, for the first time in 6 months, I slept like an absolute baby last night. Am I the asshole?